Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Ron Paul, shall we? Let's talk a little about Ron Paul. He's a tricky fella. Yes, he's popular with the college kids, but let's face it, college kids are binge drinkers. And Ron Paul, he's a far cry from your run-of-the-mill right-wing extreme nut job, right? He's a right-wing extremist nut job / gynecologist. And people give him a hard time for being a racist and pandering to racists, all because of the racist stuff printed in the Ron Paul newsletter.
Ron Paul had nothing to do with the Ron Paul newsletter.
Very little to do. He was busy working and stuff. He couldn't read his own. That's what he says. I didn't know, but he was busy working.
He was busy being a racist in his regular life.
Yes. And the only people who have time to read newsletters are the unemployed. Yes. We know that. Okay. So, so people are giving him a hard time because of all the stuff he wrote in those racist newsletters. But let's face it, those things happened back in the 90s. They were youthful indiscretions when Ron Paul was like 50. Right? So he's on Morning Joe, and I like to watch the West Coast. I live on the West Coast. Yes. I like to watch the West Coast feed of the Morning Joe right before I go to bed because I like to go to sleep angry. And here's Ron Paul telling us that Mitt Romney doesn't really have core convictions or stand for anything.
Yes, and whether he's shown himself to be someone who has clear convictions.
The Republican Party of the last several decades, I would say he has core convictions, but I just disagree with them. Okay. Because the core convictions aren't what I think we sometimes pretend we believe in and what we have believed in the past. So
yeah, see, those other Republicans like Mitt Romney, no core convictions, right? They pretend they have them, unlike Ron Paul, who has core convictions, like being against the welfare state, meaning he's against Social Security and Medicare. And he doesn't want to hear about Medicare and Social Security being a social contract that one generation has with another. It's all hogwash. Ron Paul knows better than that, and he hates the social contract. I mean, just listen to him tell us what's been the result of America's intergenerational social contract of Social Security and Medicare. This is what Ron Paul said it has led to.
Social contract you talk about for the last 100 years, and look at where we are. Look at what's happened in the last 20 years. Look at what's happened since the year 2000. Look at what's happened in the last 5 years. It's downhill. So what do we get? Education for kids. They're graduating. They have more debt, no education, and no jobs. That's what your social contract is giving you.
Yeah, see? Because of Social Security and Medicare, we don't have education, and we're broke. And it all makes a lot of sense if you don't really think about it, and you say it with a Southern twang in your voice and in an indignant manner. Most of the press is just going to give you a pass on stuff like that. Yes, Social Security ruined us, and Mr. Core Convictions would never take part in anything like that that's ruining our country.
A bit of a personal question then. Are you on Social Security? Do you get Social Security checks?
I do.
Oh, Ron, what about all that core conviction stuff? And now you have disdain for those who only pretend to have core convictions.
Adamant as I am about the purity of a philosophy, I'm also very pragmatic when it...
Oh, so he doesn't lack core convictions. He's pragmatic. See, when other people go against their core convictions, they're pretenders. When Ron Paul does it, he's a pragmatist. I get it. Do you get it, Frank?
I don't know. I think the ironic thing is that his racist newsletter had great health coverage for its workers.
That is ironic.
Yes.
That was not intergenerational, though. That was one generation.
Right,
He'll take care of you. He's got more to say about it.
As adamant as I am about the purity of a philosophy, I'm also very pragmatic when it comes, I want to get rid of the Fed, but I also don't want to get rid of the Fed tomorrow. What I want to do
is keep taking Social Security until I'm dead and then maybe have it be ruined after that. See, I'm pragmatic. I don't want to get rid of welfare state until I'm dead and done using it. See?
His son will carry on the tradition of ruining things for people.
Yes, he's angry at the welfare. He's angry at Social Security, the post office, things that work. He's upset about. These are the things.
And I'm guessing he doesn't. He talks about education, but I'm guessing he doesn't approve of public schools either,
No. Public education. That's all. But it's all bad. It's just indoctrination. See, that's not the Constitution. That's not the Constitution. Okay, so he's got a little bit more to say.
Don't you think you could have set a good example for the future generations? I mean, I'm not saying you're not the wealthiest man in Congress, I know that, but you have enough means to take care of yourself in retirement. Shouldn't you have provided an example?
Do you know that you...
Not to be all sanctimonious about it, but I just want to...
You're not being sanctimonious, you're just being a little sanctimonious.
A little bit, but I'm just curious.
Can I just say, does that bother you, Frank, at all, that the guy who's actually, for once, holding a politician's feet to the fire and exposing his hypocrisy that is easily exposed, that he's now somehow he's the bad guy? And Mika has to join in that, yeah, you're kind of a jerk for asking a direct question that should have been asked a long time ago.
He has to apologize. It's like when Woodward and Bernstein were investigating Watergate. You know, when they went to deep, look, I'm sorry to have to ask you about the cover-up in our government, but I'm being sanctimonious, aren't I, by trying to get to this story?
I'm sorry. I don't mean you guys are undermining the Constitution, and I have to bring this up. I'm sorry. They're paying me. Okay.
Normally, I'll just be a stenographer for what you want to say, but just this once.
Just this one time. Okay. Yeah. So here he is. They asked him. He has to answer that question.
A little bit, but I'm just curious. Couldn't you have set an example?
No, I think that I think the programs are so designed, just as I use the post office too. I use government highways. You do that too.
Yeah, see, because all that stuff I rail against, I actually use and like. Yeah. But it makes for good rhetoric. It makes people who don't think deeply really, really worked up. See, that's the Constitution.
I use the banks. I use the Federal Reserve System.
Yeah. I get it. You're a hypocrite. I get it. I got it. All right? Everything that you rail against, you are a part of. We've got it. Good for you.
Well, he's a libertarian. He doesn't want the government to get in the way of his hypocrisy.
He's against the roads, Frank.
It's independent hypocrisy.
How is he going to, he's against the bank central. How's he going to, how is he going to cash his Social Security check if he's against the banks, roads, and the post office? I don't understand
it's
how
almost
this is
as
work.
if it doesn't make sense.
It's almost.